All right, hi everybody, welcome back. Ryan here once again. So today you'll see behind me I've got a Cat C15 Assert here. I think this is the third one I've had come in with the same problem. As you see, I got an old oil pan gasket here. And I want to talk about the reasons that this is a little bit different style of oil pan and oil pan gasket than your typical Cummins and some of the other engines out there. So this looks like it's a one-piece gasket, but it's actually, in reality, it has 24 other pieces, if you think about it. I mean, there's one other part that goes in each one of these holes, but it's not a simple one-piece gasket like most people think. So I've had a lot of guys, they say, oh, I got my oil pan gasket done, and now it's leaking again, doing the same thing. And the reason it does that, there's a couple different reasons. First of all, most of y'all probably know with these, your heavy-duty engines, Cummins, Cat, etc., they got a front cover and a rear cover, so they're not, where your oil pan gasket comes around, it's not one solid casting, so obviously you got to put some silicone, which they did do on this particular gasket. You can see the old gray silicone where those seams are. So you got a silicone, the same way on a Cummins ISX and several other engines out there. So if for some reason a guy didn't do that, it would leak from those seams possibly, most likely. Now on these Cat engines, the C15s, 3406s, etc., C16s, 13s, they actually have a sleeve or an isolator assembly here that actually goes up inside here, like that. I mean, it actually goes in the oil pan, because the oil pan, these have an aluminum oil pan, which is a good idea because it doesn't rust like the Cummins. The ISX oil pans rust out, and you got to replace them. They're $1,000 or $2,000, depending on what you buy. So oil pan's a good idea, but to give it the strength that it needs to have, it's got to be, it's like almost an inch thick where these bolts go through. So they use a little bit bigger hole than what the bolt is. Then they use these rubber sleeve isolator assemblies here. Now the problem is that guys, they'll put a new oil pan and gasket on and they don't replace these, and these they'll get hard and they'll crack, and it will leak through this sleeve. So you can put a brand new oil pan gasket on and it'll still be leaking because the guy didn't replace these when he had it done. Now these are there's 24 of these I believe on here. They're $6 or $7 a piece. So if you're going to replace them, if you're getting a Cat OEM oil pan gasket, they're like $330, I believe. So that's one of the reasons I don't like Cats, because everything is double the price of everything else out there for some reason. And but these isolators, like I said, $6 or $7. So if you're buying 24 of them, you're into like another $150, $175 on that. So you're into like over $500 roughly for an oil pan gasket if you do it right and replace everything the way it should be. And as you guys may or may not know, I was a tech at Caterpillar up here at Ohio Cat several years ago. And I believe because they use these same sleeve isolators in some of the valve covers. And most of our manuals, if I recall right, it actually said to replace these sleeves. So like I said, I've had guys at Cat dealers and they didn't replace them before, and their oil pan gaskets the oil pan was leaking. So that's two things. Like I said, the silicone on the seams and these isolators. And like I said, these old ones, they get hard, they tear here at the seams. And I mean, I don't know if you can actually tell the difference in size there. But there's, you can see that one's probably a 1/16 of an inch. The new one's a 1/16 of an inch thicker, and it's a lot softer than that old one that gets hard, and that one's torn. And like I said, they put this rubber in there for a reason, because it's sealing something. So now let's go around the other side, and I'll show you underneath what I'm talking about as far as that oil pan being thick. I already put the oil pan back on this truck, because for a customer and trying to get the thing out of here. But I'll show you the other thing that could possibly, it may look like an oil pan gasket leaking, but it's not. So we'll take a look over there and show you those things. Okay guys, so like I said, I got this oil pan already back on, got new gasket here, as you can see. And like I said, this oil pan is really thick. I mean, it's not like a pressed steel oil pan. So I mean, this is almost an inch thick here. So that's why they have a bigger hole than what the bolt is. So that's why they use that isolator to take up that space and seal everything. So if these are shot, it's very well possible, I've seen it, where you will get oil leaking back down these. And also, I'll show you here after we wrap up here at the end, I've seen it where guys didn't put the washers on these bolts, and it will actually get a hold of that sleeve and it'll mushroom it. And typically you can change these sleeves without even taking the oil pan off. You can just use a screwdriver and pop them out after you take the bolt out, do one at a time, and retorque it, and you're good to go. But somebody at one time or another must have put a bolt in without a washer on it, because it actually, I'll show you one of the damaged ones, but I had to take this whole oil pan off for one sleeve because somebody mushroomed one, and I couldn't pull it down through the top because it made it like a fish hook up in there to where it was stuck. So we had to pull the whole oil pan off of this to change those sleeves after the guy had already had a oil pan gasket already put on it, so we had to do it twice. So now I'll show you the other thing. You'll see, notice we're on the passenger side here. This is all oily on this side, and that's one thing you want to look at. Keep in mind the passenger side. So his driver's side wasn't leaking as bad originally, and I'm going to show you why, because it actually isn't coming from the oil pan, but it looks like an oil pan. I mean, some of this is coming from the oil pan, those sleeves, but it was actually front main seal up here, and I'll show you. So it actually was running down, because with the rotation of the crank, it's going to throw more oil over here to the passenger side, and in turn, that's going to run down, and it runs right down this seam. It makes it look like you have an oil pan gasket leak. So I'll go up there and show you that main seal and show you what I'm talking about. Okay guys, so we're up here at the front of the engine, and this might be a little hard to see and down in between this serpentine belt. But right in between down in here, you can kind of see in there where the balancer is. And down on the front cover, it's wet down in there, a lot more on this side. Like I said, you can see the balancer right here, and then kind of coming in, there's oil running down where it's been slinging it to this side, and it's been running down that oil pan gasket on this side, because I know he was complaining, said that it had been leaking a lot more on this side, and that's why, because it's going to throw it to this side and leak down. But sorry, with this pulling everything in the way, it's a little difficult to see down in behind there. So right in, if you look straight in between that belt and the casting block there, you can see where that oil is leaking in there, down the front cover and running down the oil pan there. So there's four things right off the bat that could be causing that oil pan leak or looking like an oil pan leak. So yeah, so always check that out. If you think you got a oil pan, if it's leaking more on this passenger side, check out your front main seal up here if you can, and see if it's leaking. Okay, so here's that damaged sleeve that I was talking about. So you can kind of compare it with a new one, and you can see that this flange is slightly bigger than this brand new one. Just a little bit, just a very, very minute amount. And like I said, when I was trying to get this one out, and we was trying to pull it, I just thought it was maybe stuck, and I was trying to pull it out with vice grips and stuff, and eventually, tore the washer and seal off of it. This, like I said, that's the old one. So I think what happened with this is that somebody, I'll show you on this one here, on this new one. So if you don't put a washer on there, it basically is the same size as what this sleeve is. So I think what happened is I didn't have a washer, somebody tightened it up, and it actually bottomed out against the block, and it mushroomed that out and made it to where you couldn't pull it out through the bottom like you should be able to. So that's another thing. With these, torque on these is 42 foot. I torque them to 42 foot-pounds. And I wouldn't then torque them once and leave them alone, because if you over torque these, there's a good chance that you can mushroom this sleeve, especially if these rubber seals are bad, because then it's going to allow you to compress it even more, and then you got a problem when you got to pull the whole oil pan off to get these out, and then it's a hassle because they don't want to come out either way. So that's the story of the sleeves, and if you guys are interested, part number on those is 2401614, and they call it a sleeve, but Isolator sleeve. So that's that. Okay guys, so that pretty much covers it, and it's pretty much what I have for today. So in summary, if your oil pan gasket on your Cat C15 or 3406 is leaking, C13s, C16s, etc., anything with a cat with an aluminum oil pan, such as this unit here has. Check out those 4 different things. Obviously, you won't be able to check out the silicone, but you might be able to get underneath there and look on the block and see if there's any squished out. But a lot of times, like I said, it's these sleeves. If you are going to get an oil pan gasket job done somewhere, I would go ahead and tell them that you want these sleeves replaced as well, because a lot of guys evidently don't know, because I've had 3 of them in here where they had gaskets on and they came back and they're leaking a month later. So yeah, check that stuff out. And like I said, if it's on the right side, check out your front main seal as well, just to make sure that ain't leaking and running back to, making it look like an oil pan gasket leak also. So that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching. Hope that helps you out. Appreciate all support and everything, questions, comments, all that stuff, etc. If you're new, please subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that bell for the updates, and as always, like the video. So again, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.